All right. Hey, everyone. I'm Eric from FIU in DC, and I'm here with Helena Ramirez Richardson, the director of the Young Leaders Program at the Heritage Foundation. And we are here to discuss some internship application advice and motivation as part of our DC Ready online course. Helena, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Eric. It's really great to be here.
Helena, you were, prior to your DC life and career, an FIU undergraduate and student leader. Can you talk a little bit about your own FIU experience and how you were able to take the leadership roles that you had and use them to position yourself to apply for your first DC roles?
Of course. Yeah, Eric. And I know that, a lot of students over the time of their career at FIU are a little worried about how can I translate my student leadership experience to in-person, real paying job. And I was very involved at FIU. I was a student body president of MMC. That means that I also sat as a university trustee. I was involved in student ambassadors, where you and I actually met. I was involved in Panther Camp. So there were a lot of programs like that, as well as a sorority and things like that. But what the major difference was when I came to Washington, D.C., which, by the way, my parents were like, no, you're not supposed to leave until you're married. And until, and so the cultural aspect is very different. And I think it's one that, as usually first generation students, as well as others that are just very close knit with families, right? I would just want to say, I would like to encourage you. An internship is maybe a good way of just getting a taste of what else is out there outside of Miami. And I will tell you, my parents were so proud, right? Every time I would call my dad, he'd be like, Mija de Washington, right? My daughter from Washington, right? Like, he made it seem like I was a senator. And, if anything, it was really encouraging to know that I had their blessing. And, even by way of an internship or a full-time job, there's so many things outside that you can later bring to a place like Miami or to a place even like FIU, right? Of adding to the classroom experience as well as adding to the workforce. And so I want to just serve as an encouragement of saying, it's okay, you can leave, you can return. And something like this internship that I'm really excited to talk to you that I oversee is a great first step, right? And so I was really involved. I ended up coming to Washington, D.C. to actually go to a conference. And I remember I called someone from FIU, Carlos Becerra, and I said, hey, I would like to look for an internship. And he actually helped me of showcasing two organizations. And one was, I got offered the internship on the spot, but then when I asked if it was paid, they said no, it was unpaid. And at the time, DC was 23% more expensive than Miami. And so the next spot that I went to was a Congressional Hispanic Leadership Institute, Congressional Hispanic Leadership Institute. And that one I decided to change it up, right? Of saying, okay, well, how can I, go in wanting an opportunity, but maybe showcasing what skills I have? One of the things that I think a lot of students don't do is they don't highlight the fact that your college year experiences do serve as work experience, right? So for example, in student ambassadors, you and I, Eric, would give tours. We would help with customer service when it comes down to, prospective students, as well as donors and a number of different people who are just wanting to hear a little bit more about FIU as a school, as well as the student life and culture and things like that. And so we were the front line, right? Like, we were the first line of defense, when we were giving tours and talking about the president's office and things like that. And so I think a lot of people don't realize that experience would be perfect for a fundraising experience, right? It'd be perfect for someone in outreach. And so I think a lot of students just typically think, okay, well, my work experience starts when I'm getting paid or when I'm actually outside of school, when I would actually challenge you and saying, no, include your school experience in that experience. So, so I went into this interview with CHLI, and I saw that basically they only had one person, as well as an outgoing executive director. And so I quickly was just like, okay, I need to use my educational events experience from FIU days of just hosting events for students and make that into something that would be beneficial for this organization. And so educational events in college is what we call programming outside of college. And so I was able to just translate some things using what I used for a student outreach to be what they could potentially use in a youth outreach. And within a week, I got a call saying, we're not offering you an internship. We want to offer you a full-time job. And so overall, I can tell you about so many experiences like that, that it's all about translating those experiences of saying, wait a minute, you do have a youth experience, a youth, kind of outreach that you can do that does relate as experience.
Oh, fantastic. It was great to relive those student ambassador memories as you were talking. So you had the prescience as a graduating student to know that your experiences had value, to get over the imposter syndrome of it and market those campus experiences to what this organization needed. And to re-highlight something you said, you were able to kind of even tell what that organization needed based on who was working there and what they were doing. So that's all fantastic advice from
Well,
the point of
Eric, I will say I had the added benefit that it was an FIU alum who was sitting across from me,
Mhm.
right? And so she was able to say, hey, I felt much more comfortable because there was another Panther on the other side of that interview. And so at the end of the day, it was going to be two Panthers running in the organization, since they were losing a person. And so I felt like I could actually be honest with her of saying, well, I've done this, I've done that. And she was like, oh, and so it was really her mentorship that helped me understand what was possible, right? Because I was able to kind of go through. But, I will say Panthers are out there, especially in Washington, D.C. A lot of people don't realize. I want to say we're close to 1,500, if not more, when it comes down to the Panthers in D.C., right? The FIU in D.C. office is an outstanding resource. And, if anything, it really helps just kind of navigate the roadways. And so I'm really happy that if I can serve as a mentor to anyone out there listening, right? Like you have a friend in me, but it's one of those that like sometimes it's just about taking that first step, right? Of saying like, okay, I can go outside of Miami or even Florida.
Yeah, thank you. So now you run an internship program, and not even just any internship program, a very large internship program, which you can share with us how many people apply every semester and how many people you accept. And so in your current role, you are seeing a lot of applications, seeing resumes, seeing why people want to interview. From that vantage point, what would you say to the students watching about how to make sure that their applications stand out in a competitive program like yours?
So you're absolutely right. I see over 1,000 applications when it comes down to our program. So we accept almost 200 interns for a paid internship at the Heritage Foundation. And what we say is that we're building an America where freedom, opportunity, prosperity, and civil society flourish. And so all of our programs is really to uplift and kind of build an America that we want to see, and ensuring freedom and opportunity. And, I have 60 to 70 internships every semester, so spring, summer, and fall. And additionally, it ranges in 30 different departments. So thankfully, we are an organization that actually has a plethora of different, types of roles, right? So it could be everything from business administration to research roles, doing on trade and international, agreements and things like that, as well as national defense and amongst others, including outreach. And so, what makes an FIU candidate unique? I think that FIU students as a whole are uniquely positioned to address the needs of the world, right? To address policy, research, right? And I think the biggest thing is really passion. When you think of a typical FIU student, they might have seen, some type of former communism or socialism. I think, they have a real want and thirst for liberty and freedom. And so I think those stories of why it is that you're coming to the United States, or why your family, like mine, right? My dad fled from Cuba in 1962 at the age of 19. Why do I continue his legacy of searching for freedom and searching for a better life? And so, FIU, again, the students are worlds ahead, right? And I'm not just saying that as the motto of FIU, but I really do think that the Panthers, right, are in a unique position that even some Ivy League schools don't have. And so what does that then translate to when it comes down to national security, when it comes down to Latin America and policy? I think that those are some that just immediately stand out to me. But I will say, I think that, FIU students have had to do a little bit more of external facing stuff, right? And so don't dismiss outreach roles, don't dismiss customer service roles, don't dismiss communications roles. All of those are what students are probably uniquely, able to fulfill, more so because you just had to naturally do it. And so I think FIU students have a lot of opportunities, but it's more so about just being exposed to them. And I want to say, if anyone's interested in the Heritage Foundation, please feel free to contact me, elena.richardson@heritage.org. I'd be happy to answer. We also have another program that we just started called the Academy, which is a virtual leadership program. So let's say you're not yet sure about the jump to Washington, D.C. This would be a great program for you to get a taste of what the content would be when it comes down to our educational program, as well as, just one step would be then doing the paid research that you would then do with the internship program, right? So there is a leadership component.
Awesome. Thanks, Helena. And just to make sure we're clear, because you gave a lot of great reasons that most FIU students are very well suited for this type of role. Having that background is one thing, but there is something about putting that on your application materials. If the student has the background that you're describing and is not sure if a resume and cover letter is just about, their work experience, I did this, I filed that, this personal background that drives whatever policy passion they have is absolutely something they should make sure comes through on a application to your program or anything else that's policy oriented here in Washington.
Well, I will say that, in a related kind of vein, is that a lot of people just don't answer the questions, right? So for example, one of the biggest mistakes that I see in our application is that it says, please list the top 4 departments that you would like to be, you would like to consider. And then in a different part of the application, it says, please name the #1 public policy issue you would most want to affect. And it's very often that people don't have those mirror each other, right? So you might say that, trade is your #1 passion policy topic, but then you don't list any of our trade or economic shops when it comes down to departments that you would like to be considered for. And so oftentimes it's just about reading the application and making sure you're setting a cohesive message when it comes down to the application as a whole. I would also say, be on the lookout, to provide anecdotes that are uniquely yours, right? Oftentimes people are like applying just thinking, well, what does the organization or the, application reviewer want to hear or read? And I would say, no, tell a story that is so you that it's very hard to say, oh, well, I don't know who Eric is, right? Show them who Eric is. And I think that's going to go a lot further than, just being like, okay, here's the cookie cutter response. I see so many cookie cutter responses. And so when I do find a story, all of a sudden you stand out, and then I'm anxious to talk about you.
Awesome. This has been incredibly practical and operational in terms of your advice, as well as inspiring and motivating. So thank you for taking the time to do this and for your ongoing support of FIU.
I just want to lastly say thank you, Eric, because you've been such a partner. The FIU in DC office really is an outstanding resource that I wish I would have had. But now it's really providing that opportunity. So if anyone hasn't checked out the FIU in DC office itself, please make sure to schedule a visit if and when you're in DC. But I will say, Eric and Carlos and the whole FIU in DC team know where all the alumni are. And I wish I would have had that resource, but you know what? I'm now part of that network. And so, Eric, I want to say thank you for all the work that you're doing in that office.
Oh, that's too kind. Thanks, Lena.